Welcome to another episode of Top Lines and Tales, your weekly livestock podcast. And as always, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Harbro, for their continued support. This week on Top Lines and Tales, I'm delighted to have a hill farmer from North Wales, up near Anglesey, and a very outspoken man, breeds chickens, sheep, wild ponies, various things. And there's plenty of those around, but this week, a very different man, I think, because very much a social influencer there, Gareth Jones, and a man who represents the countryside and the farming community.
Yeah, that's a heck of an intro, to be honest with you. And hello to everybody. Yeah, I'm a farmer, first of hand, and, you know, a father to three, husband to one. And my hashtag is living the dream. And I just like to share my daily routine every single day on social media. And you know, it's been popular over the last 12 months, maybe even more important that people understand about food security, seasonality, you know, how we can change the way we eat and what we eat. And yeah, the crazy thing is there's 1 million people following me now every day, which is a bit scary.
That is a bit scary. 1 million people is a lot of people, and we'll maybe go into that in a second as to how you got there and who actually follows you. But as I said, you are a social influencer, and I'd like to think with my podcast we socially influence a lot of people. But as I said, you really do. You represent the countryside and its farmers, and you have a message normally and a voice in the community, which the agricultural industry really needs. So you're a proper campaigner, I would say, for the farming community.
Yeah, listen, I'm like Marmite. People like me, people don't like me. I don't sit on fences. I get it wrong every now and again, and I'm willing to put my hands up in the air and say, listen, I messed up there. But the truth is, if we don't have these conversations and these discussions, we will never find the answers and the solutions. So my belief is, you know, opening up the gate and making sure that people know where the food comes from, how it's produced, and what goes on in the countryside. 84.5% of people now live in cities and towns. They're removed from how the food's produced. They're removed from the seasons, you know, from hearing the first cuckoo to seeing the first swallow, you know, to seeing the first leaves come on the trees to the first leaves falling off the trees. They just expect to walk into supermarkets and shops and everything will be there in abundance for an affordable price. And then if there's anything wrong with the climate or wildlife around it, blame the farmer. Farmer's at fault. They're the rivers, anything. And it's frustrating, especially with all the pressure coming from mainstream media and some portals of social media as well. So I'm vocal. I'm not afraid to, you know, put my 10 pence worth into any conversation. And I really do feel that the farmer and the farming community have had a hard time, because however you look at it, across the board, across the world, farmers are struggling. If you look at what's happening in the Netherlands, you look at what's happening in New Zealand, America, farmers are under a lot of pressure from governments. You know, big corporations are coming in, producing this processed food, which are making millions. It's very, very complicated. It's a big story, but you're going to need a farmer every single day of your life, however you look at it.
Sure.
Because it's not Tesco's, it's not Asda's, it's not Aldi's that are producing that food.
Sure.
It's a farmer.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a farmer at the end of the day, and they're the people that are at the coalface, and they're the people that are taking the brunt of the pressure, you know, and we're still doing the job that is so important, which is feeding the nation.
Sure, absolutely brilliant. And as I said, you run 1 million people follow you. You've got TikTok accounts there with millions of people all over the world. You've got a YouTube channel, I think, with 800,000 people following you. Following the life of a hill farmer. I wouldn't say a simple hill farmer. I think you're probably a bit more than I wouldn't insult you with it.
A lot worse than that. Don't worry.
But your YouTube goes out there and informs people what really goes on in the countryside, and you're not frightened to say it how it is, and you say a lot of things that I think many other people would like to say, and as you said, you can sometimes get a backlash from that, but you say it like it is, and there's a lot more people need to be able to say that, and a lot of people that would like to say that, and you've obviously got the mouthpiece there to get to these people, and it's phenomenal that you've got a coverage that you've got, and let's look back a little bit at how you got that.
Yeah, well, I think I'd be fortunate, in the early 2000s, I was involved with a couple of TV productions, which brought me to a situation where I thought, wow, this is interesting, and developed that skill. I worked with CBBCs, how to be epic at everything, and then I did a program, Fern Factor, another BBC program about the National Park, which is called The Big Country. And it was weird. One of the film guys, really, he was a director, come cameraman as well, a really nice guy. And he said, "Well, yeah, I come across a lot of people." He said, "But you're very natural on camera." And I was like, "I'm not sure what you mean." He says, "Well, it doesn't seem to faze you." And I thought, well, why should they? I'm just the same off camera as I am on camera. And it never did. It didn't. When somebody point something in my face, I don't really care. I just say what I want to say. So, and then I went on a hell of a journey through the television, working with the BBC, ITV. I've worked with every single broadcaster, from Jack Whitehall to Kirstie Alley with Netflix and things. The opportunities have been brilliant. Gareth Edwards up here, we've had Michael Portillo, Jack Whitehall, all these big names, and I've always remembered what my father said to me as a child. You speak to the guy that brushes the road the same as you would speak to royalty. And I've had the opportunity to do both of that, from speaking to Prince Charles at his own Welsh abode, to speaking to Tommy Brush that was in the village here. And I think that's important. We're all people. We're all the same. We're all born to this earth with nothing, and we'll take away nothing. But we have to remember that we have to be respectful of each other, but we have to stand up for what we believe, and freedom of choice and freedom of speech is very important to me. And I believe that sometimes we are oppressed, as a nation, as a Welsh nation, because of our language and the way some of the things that happened over generations. And we've been a very quiet nation as the Welsh. We're not willing to push ourselves or showcase ourselves. So we've got to get out there. We've got to make sure there's a future for the next generation speaking Welsh. Okay. Living off the land and having an understanding of the importance of our history, our heritage, and our way of life, as a countryman. And
that's brilliant. But I mean, it's not just Welsh now. You far outreach that very quickly. But let's just go back a little bit. I mean, I said you're a hill farmer, and you farm there. I think with your father, is it? Your family farm been there 200-300 years, and the family farm's very important, isn't it? But I mean that you're custodians of the land and a farmer first, and you've been there and done it. Really, it's not just like you're out there talking about it like many of these people are. You've got the experience first, and the chat later.
Yeah, exactly. I walk the walk and talk the talk. It's not somebody that pretends to bring other people in to do things. I do it myself. I shear. I grow my own food. I shoot. I hunt. I fish. I live that life, and I don't pretend not to be something that I'm not. And I think that's really important. There's 375 years of history of my family on the same land here at St. Clevan. When you start to understand that behind my house is a Celtic hill fort, but then we've had the archaeologists here over the last 15 years, and we've got a field called Caigraig, which means the stone field, and it never means anything to you as a child, but now as they've been digging in here, they've understood this is one of the first axe factories in the world, going back 6,000 years. Wow. Imagine the history on this land, how people have lived off this land, how they've utilised and used everything from the stone to the wood, to the animals, to the soil, to the manure. Everything is here for a reason. So for me, I want to look back at what my forefathers did. how they produce food, be more regenerative, be more sustainable, be more seasonal. All these things are very important for us to help the problems we've got on planet Earth at the moment.
Sure. And the hill there, you'll tell me the name of the hill because I can't pronounce it probably. And you're up there, as I said, up near the sea, I think, on the north coast of Wales there, and mountains, as you said, you've got mountains up there and families around you. And I don't think you farm so many sheep on the mountains now, but it's all about the ponies. Tell me about the ponies you've got up there.
Oh, there's still quite a lot of sheep. We still run 4,000 sheep here. The candidly mountain range is the biggest open mountain range in England and Wales, 27,000 acres. So, yeah, we have the candidly mountain ponies, 220 breeding mares left in the world, and they would have run all over Wales and into England, Cumbria at one stage, and they were running at Pierce since the Celtic times.
Right.
So this is their last stronghold. This is their Jurassic Park. This is the last piece they've got left, and it's beautiful, you know. They're mysterious, they're magical, and and the stories. King Arthur's last or summer fort was just down the road from us. Panterkellen or Pantergellin, so the Valley of the Enemy, and most probably, you know, they hit up here for them reasons. I look out over the Menai Strait, straight onto Anglesey, where my wife came from, and behind me are the Candidly Mountains up to 3,000 feet. So very, very fortunate.
Tell me about the ponies then. Do you own those ponies? I mean, are they wild ponies? Do you look after them, your custodians? How does that work? Do you breed from them and make money from them?
Oh, well, yeah, we wish we made money from them. No, they are semi-feral, so they are managed and owned. Not all of them. There's different areas. But in our village, there's 7 families. 7 very old families that have been keeping these traditionally for hundreds of years. And, they're a big part of our history, Welsh living history. So, they're important to watch after them for the next generations.
Sure.
And we gather them once a year. We bring them in, we take a few of the males, the colt balls off, a few of the older mares that aren't going to survive over the winter. So, cut their tails, make sure that we know which ones have been in. So when people see the ones with the long tails, they'll understand they haven't been in for a few years. Because, the operation is massive to gather these mountains. So you're never going to get them all in.
Yeah.
And, like life itself, there's death. And with social media now, you get some problems with people like, oh my God, there's a dead pony. There's one that, you walk down any street in any country in the world, you'll see thin people, you'll see fat people, you'll see sick people, you'll see lame people. And that is society exactly the same on the mountain.
Okay.
What we don't do is we don't leave anything suffer. So if anything's suffering, we'll either euthanize it or bring it off the mountain. Sure. And we tend to like to see things die naturally because it's part of the ecological balance up there. Every time an older pony dies up there, we should be celebrating its life because it's feeding so many different families, from the foxes to the ferry. Everything that runs up there, the birds of prey, everything that feeds off that carcass will be benefiting. And it's sad when some of these people are just so negative towards death on that mountain, and they just can't see. Would you be cleaning the bodies of the zebras out on the savannas? No, you wouldn't, because they know that the buzzards and the hyenas and the lions will be feeding them, feasting off that. And we have to be logical, and we have to be practical about it. And we try our best. It's a massive operation, and financially it's disastrous for us. But we're very lucky. We are a management agreement with Welsh Government that give us a few £1,000, towards the keeping of them. But when you see how much it takes, to get 20 or 30 people up on the mountain to gather these ponies, how much petrol, how much, time and effort goes into it, financially, no, a long way from being profitable. But if is profit money in the bank, or is profit living history for the next generation? So we have to look at it in two ways.
That's brilliant, and I can soundbite that. Is profit living off the land, or is it preserving history? Absolutely right. And more recently, of course, we've got wildlife problems. We've got an upset in the ecosystem with the likes of badgers and people protecting foxes even and what have you. And you'll have to do your share of that around the farm and around the mountains, I suppose, keeping foxes down because they do the damage. And it's about maintaining that balance, really. And hey, let's get on to the badgers. I mean, it's obviously a contentious subject, but let's talk about how our forefathers or generations before us came in and protected the badgers, and now the problems that they're causing, Gareth.
Well, we have to look at government policy, and again, when government policy comes in and protects certain species, and I could see their point at one stage. Mm-hmm. They're protecting them from the badger baiters, which is an awful crime, and it needs to be stopped. But when you look at what's happening now, when we're seeing the numbers of hedgehogs just falling off the cliff, mm-hmm. number of ground nesting birds just dying off, and it's because there's an overpopulation of a certain species that a lot of these wildlife experts, I don't want to go into names, but some of them work for the BBC, some of them, have got massive voices. They're just absolutely deluded. They're deluded because if anybody with any sense on planet Earth standing on the ground will know that overpopulation of a certain species will cause problems to other things. And that's why we've got TB. That's why we've got so many losses of habitats and wildlife in our countryside, is because these creatures are protected. Sure. And can I tell you, I love seeing the odd badger. Mm-hmm. As a child here, we never seen one. We never ever seen one. Mm-hmm. And we have hedgehogs everywhere here. We're ground nesting birds. We are now at the point we know there is 7 or 8 sets, and we know our land is being infiltrated by these creatures, and we are under TB restrictions. So we were tested in November. We had two inconclusives. They came back, retested. One had to go again because, it came back as a positive. They went, one had lesions, but they haven't cultured them. So really, we're still in limbo. Okay. We've had one then blood test, radon test, and skin test, where we lost 7 cows. One was a really good cow, one of my favourite cows, Hereford cow, heavily pregnant. She had to go, which was very, very difficult. But, like our vet says, you've got to bite the bullet, you've got to come out of the equation, or you could be, in a worse situation. So all them went. We tested clear then in May, and now 21st of this month, we go for another test. So if we get another clear test, that's 2 consecutive tests. We then have a 6-monthly test, and then we can go back to a 12-monthly test. So
sure.
It's, what, mate, honestly, it's a massive strain. Mm-hmm. It's a massive strain. And I can't tell you what it does to family farms. I've got a friend now who's on the cusp of losing 100 cows. 100 cows. They're all going to be killed. He's got 25 or 26 of them, heavily pregnant, will have to be shot on the yard. Sure. He's a father of young children. That's all going to happen on his farm, during the summer holidays when his children people have got no iota of an idea what's going on, and it needs to be addressed. Because people are still thinking that Mr. Badger is he has nothing to do with it. Well, I totally disagree. Yeah. And deer is a carrier as well. Wildlife are carriers, but again, it's an overpopulation of a certain mammal that is causing this.
And a simple decision that was made. Well, I mean, my father used to be in a badger digging gang going back in the 1940s, and they would dig badgers out because they had TB, and they did cull them, and that's right. But I mean, you've got to remember, probably on a podcast I have here, we're mainly farmers. It's a livestock podcast. Most of these guys are all nodding their head, agreeing with you. We know the problem between us. My listeners know the problem. Maybe they don't, the ones overseas, but there's very little we can do, because the counter of it is people with ignorance, isn't it? As you said, you didn't name names. I'll name names. Chris Packham for one. These people are brainwashing the public that the badger is still a great creature, and some of this should have been done more discreetly, maybe, Gareth, that maybe some of these things should have been done, but now they're so protected and there's so much spotlight on the badgers. Is there very little we can do, or have we still got a chance to do something to get this job redressed?
Well, I tell you, when people begin to go hungry and they start to see, the problems that are happening, they will have to change. Everybody has a choice, everybody can make an educated choice, and I don't hide away from that. And I think, I'll disagree with you. I think the badger is a nice animal, and I haven't got a problem with it. But what I've got to bring into this conversation is it's addressing the balance. Yeah. And this is where the government and people within the policy-making powers of government should be addressing, because the science is there. The science is there, and that's what's frustrating. In the cull areas, because I interviewed Teresa Coffey in the Lowell show, I slipped in there with my, for my YouTube thing, and it was quite a surprise. She says, "Oh, aren't you the guy from social media?" She recognised me. I thought, "Oh, bloody hell, that's good." But, she was willing to put her egg on the block, and I hate going into politics, but I like people like that are willing to say, "Yeah, it's working. It's working." It's working in areas. So why don't we take that science and plonk it right in the middle of that conversation and say, right, let's get a mainstream program, BBC, ITV, Channel 5, Channel 4, whatever, just to say the stress and strain on the farming community, but not just on that, the stress and strain on wildlife, ground nesting birds, hedgehogs. Let's get some real gamekeepers. Let's get some people that have been involved in. No, every single one of these people have got a sign, a declaration that they're not allowed to talk about what they're doing. It's bloody wrong, in my opinion.
That is
so wrong.
It is the problem, Gareth. But the problem again is getting the mainstream media to allow that to be viewed. But it's one step further than that, because when you do put that program on, you're getting people to watch it as well. That's the thing, and people will watch that, and people will tune into what they want to watch. And I suppose we go back to the divide in social media, really, the sort of siloed effect where on social media you're talking to my listeners now who are on the same page as you, and it's about getting the people who aren't on the same page as you to listen rather than to be opposing. And that is a problem again with the mainstream TV. If you put a program out like that on there, would people watch it? And I suppose there's the rub.
Yeah, but we've got to open that conversation. We've got to put that science. We've got to put, the Brian Mays and the Packhams and the George Mob. We've got to put them, with people with scientific evidence that go, well, look, this is what's happened to the curlew. This is what's happened to the hedgehog. And this is what happened when we started to take the number of badgers back. And the number of TB cases came down. That's it. Yeah. It's simple. Yeah. And you cannot argue with science. They will bring in their, because every scientist will have a price. And I hate to say that. Yeah. Every does have a price. If you're funded by the meat industry, you're going to say meat's good. If you're funded by the vegan societies, you're going to say, oh, that's the best diet, because that's your livelihood. That's what's paying your mortgage. That's what putting your kids through school. And you can't blame people, but you've got to understand that there is a massive problem in this country and the countryside. There is a massive divide. And we have to bring people together. We have to start to join. We have to build a bridge from the city to the country. And it's difficult, from the fox hunting to the people with the red coats, to the militants in the SABs, and, they hate the foxes. But I love seeing a fox. I ain't going to lie. I think one of the most beautiful creatures. If you see a mountain fox at its best, it's absolutely amazing. And we get some springs that we don't lose hardly any lambs. And they're the years that we go, do you know what? Yeah, it's been a good year. So we don't. But then you get a year where you're absolutely hammered, and the fox will go into that field and not kill, but maim maybe 15 or 20 lambs, maybe kill about 5 or 6. You know, you cannot run a business like that. And that's what I'm saying, you know, when we address that problem, you know, we'll help the situation. When we seen this on the mountain, when we brought people in to start to monitor and knock the numbers, the grouse came back. You know, the ground nesting birds came back. And this is where a lot of people look at the grouse shoots and think, yeah, well, there's no grouse shooting here, but, you know, they've come back naturally. But look at that and they think, you take them people away from that equation. You take them people away from that land. And I will bet you that place will be bare of nature a lot sooner.
Sure.
And people don't get it. They don't get it.
Sure.
You know, it's the way you raise and the way you control the habitats and understanding the land. You know, 375 years, my father taught me everything. There's a word in Welsh which is called cnevin, and it means hefting. You know, it's a sense of belonging to an area. And when you heft your sheep, you know, the salmon spawning in the spring, you take them new lambs onto the areas. They know where they're going. They understand, you know, and that's hundreds of years of experience. And you cannot take that out of the equation, because once it's taken out, you can never bring it back.
Sure, I totally get that. I mean, we understand about hefting again. Again, a lot of my listeners in Scotland will be nodding their head again. You know, hefting is quite a big thing on the Scottish hills too. Let's just move on a little bit, Gareth, and I would say move on, but I mean the issue comes down to education. I think Nelson Mandela in his book A Long Road to Freedom said, well, the only way we can bring do away with apartheid and bring these people together is by educating everybody, and it's very, very hard to get that education across when we've got too many people paddling in a different direction. And I suppose that's how we've got to go back to basics, really. I mean, you've mentioned before that the public is disconnected with agriculture and getting more and more so, and that's a tragedy. But we've got to go back to the beginning, really, to try and get some education back into the younger people. And how do we do that?
Yeah, totally agree. We need to, you know, it needs to be on the curriculum. We need to take children into farms, you know, on that school curriculum, bring them onto farms. 2015, I did the programme, Farmer and the Food Chain, and I went to school in Ely in South Wales, and I took them on a farm. And, you know, I was so shocked. A lot of the kids hadn't seen animals before. They didn't understand the differences, you know, with cows and beef and lamb and, you know, sheep, and they got it. You know, children are like sponges. They're so clever. Mm-hmm. You can hide them away, and you can pretend that something's not. We are hunter-gatherers. It's in our DNA, and I hear a lot of vegetarians and vegans saying, you know, if abattoirs had glass doors and glass windows, you know, like everything would be open. I still believe that people would eat meat. But what's happened is they've cotton-wooled a lot of society. They've cotton-wooled the next generation. So take them on dairy farms, take them on pig farms, but give them a difference between, you know, an industrial massive piggery which are producing thousands of porkers to an outdoor area. And the same with organic milk systems. Show them, because farming comes from one place to another, and there will always be cheap food, and there'll always be, you know, that need for cheap food, because some people aren't going to be able to afford, you know, the organic side of things or the free range side of things. I'm not saying that, but give them children the opportunity to see where their food comes from. Yeah. You know, take them out there, take them on a day's pheasant shoot, stand them behind the guns on a peg, watch them birds fall. Have an understanding of, you know, what happens to that bird after, you know, taking the feathers off, gutting it, skinning it, breasting it, legging it, whatever, and cooking it. You know, my kids were brought up like that, and they're not afraid to be talking about where their food comes from, because they understand how it's grown. And, you know, even the crops in the field, from birds we shoot to the mice and the rats and the rabbits. Everything has a cost. Mm-hmm. Everything we put on our plates, doesn't matter what your diet is, It's vegetarian, vegan, pescatarian, flexitarian, carnivore. Everything's going to have a cost. Something will die for us to put that food on our plates.
Yeah, well said.
And I think we need to make sure that children know the difference on every single diet and give them an educated choice. Let them make the decisions for themselves from a young age. And then, we can move forward.
Okay.
And we can build a better Britain on our bellies. If we have our kids eating proper food, seasonal food that comes from the ground and from the sea, it's either surf or turf for me.
Yeah.
It's got to be. And that's the natural thing. Anything that's processed and thing, we've got a diabetes and an obesity problem in this country. It's all to do with the sugars in our food.
Sure.
And we have to look at the way forward. We need a farming food revolution. If we can have a farming food revolution with the next generation, things could be different.
Sure. Let's just rein you in a little bit there, Gareth, just because, as I said before, you're a podcast here where you're preaching very much to the converted, where all my listeners are nodding their head, I can see just now. But it's down to us, isn't it? It's down to us to do that, to make that difference. And I suppose I'm asking really, what can we do? And you already mentioned these things, getting people on farms. I mean, a lot of people now, of course, are starting to take money off the general public, a lot of farmers as a sideline, if you like, or more than a sideline, putting in shepherd's huts and bothies and various things. People can come and stay on the farm and getting them there, taking the money off them. But when they get them there, they can't just lecture them and say, right, now you're here, you need to learn about this. But there has to be a way that we can take that interest, which I think is coming further through with people coming to stay on farms and not farms, but coming to the countryside. We have to find a way really where when we get there, we can say, well, it's not just a leaflet, but this is, while you're here, have a look at the cows. While you're here, have a look at the calving, have a look at the lambs being born. Don't just sort of go there and admire the mountains. And I suppose that's something we need to try and take forward so we can educate ourselves and the younger generation again who listen to this is what their job is, what their task is, what can they do to bring this to turn this around.
Well, every single farmer has got that power in his own hand.
Okay.
Every single farmer has got that power in his own hand, because every farmer will have a smartphone that has a camera, a video camera, that they can produce something for the masses to see. And for the last 10 years, I've been doing immersive tours. Americans, we're doing 86 this year. So each one of them will have from 20 to 30 people. So there's thousands coming over the years through the farm. And do you know what? It's amazing what these people learn from an hour and a half or 2 hours on the farm. And they want to learn more. And that's helping as well, sharing that message, understanding regenerative agriculture, understanding seasonality, and understanding I'm using the wool on my vegetable plot and how we use the manure and how the ponies are important for the ecological balance. So, it's up to us as individuals to do that. But, and this is a big, massive, but it's very important that governments in Scotland, Ireland, Wales and England take this to the next generation, because we can't do that everywhere. I'm working on a little project called the Farmer Dude again now to bring, a few little short, sharp, educational, funny videos about farming for the younger generation through my YouTube. But, I'm a small voice. This has to come from the people in power. They have to make a difference. And they have to educate the next generation so they understand where food comes from, because they have been removed away from that equation. And just understand where their food comes, understand how to cook it from scratch, stop this processed rubbish, stop these big corporations, selling this stuff that's killing our children. We have to really address that. And I mean that passionately.
I can.
There's no.
Your passion certainly comes through. Sorry to cut you short. Your passion certainly comes through there. And again, one or two of my listeners will be thinking, you're in a position where you now have your YouTube channel, and that does bring you obviously some revenue through that at some stage. But you're also a busy man on a busy farm, and a lot of these guys are saying the same, that the labour's gone off the farms now. The farmers, they work longer hours, they do more stuff themselves, they drive their own combines, they milk their own cows, because that's the way it's gone. And for these people to go that extra mile for that education, it comes at a cost there, doesn't it, Gareth? And I suppose that's where maybe we should be getting some intervention, some help from the government to supply that cost back to us, because for every farmer to have that responsibility is one thing, but to have the time and the resource for the financial or time wise to be able to do that is practically difficult, would I say.
Yeah, and we've got unions as well. We've got FUW in Wales, and we've got the NFU. These unions, they can do a great job as well. There's a few things that have really worked well for them, and they should be pushing more. They should be pushing more on that educational side. But again, we've all got a phone in our hands. We've all got a phone in our pockets. We've all got social media channels. If you haven't, get one. And, I built this 10, 15 years ago. So, this hasn't just fallen out of the sky. I've worked bloody hard to get where I am, and I've put a lot of hours into it. I've got a guy that runs my social media who's an absolute genius, and that's where I'm very, very fortunate. I'm quite good at it. So it's a team effort. My wife works for me as a PA full time. My son's come home now. He's going to be working with me. So, that generated income from my social media. And yeah, it's okay. It's not massive, but it's nice money. It's good money. And it's not easy money, because it hasn't been, easy to get where I am. But when you're in that position, I think you need to share that wealth. Yeah. And then you can build it bigger. And I think that's where I've seen the opportunity to build this momentum and to bring more people. And we're looking now, we're looking at a YouTube channel. There's so many more followers coming from India, Pakistan, America, Russia. It's bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers. But what I had here yesterday was just mind-blowing. So we had this little group of Americans here yesterday for a tour. And I didn't understand, I just do my exactly do with everything. But there was a guy there who was a billionaire, an absolute billionaire, very down to earth. And he had been brought up out in Pakistan on a small farm, moved to America, built a nutritional business, sold it, and do you know what he said to me? And I love this. He said, "We've got so much in common." And I'm thinking, wow. That is such a nice thing to say. But we go back to brass tacks. That guy was carrying the water to his house. He had an outside toilet. He'd worked really hard. Very, very driven. Very intelligent guy. But we can all do a little bit to help what we need to go forward as an industry. Right. Because if we don't, we're in trouble. Yeah, I totally get that, and I totally hear what you're saying there. And it is, we do all have this. I've said the same. There's we've all got the smartphone can do a lot of things. A lot of people are doing that, and social media does that. But you're friends with Cammy Wilson, I know, as I am at the sheep game, and Cammy's done a similar thing. Maybe not going as long as you, and sort of started fairly small, and you got that going. But I mean, he said social media can be a dangerous place, can't it? Because you can go down the channel, and social media becomes very siloed. I think when you get on certainly on Facebook groups and such like, where you've got a lot of people that we're all singing, they're all speaking off the same tune, and the other guys on the other side are speaking a different tune, and the two don't come together really. And if they do come together, the retribution comes fairly hard, doesn't it? I mean, I imagine you'll get as much hate mail as you'll get good mail. You'll certainly get some anyway from some of these bodies, and it's an unregulated place, but could be a nasty place too. Yeah, listen, we've had 3 sets of death threats. We had the police round here for 3 weeks. The truth is, it's a double-edged sword. It's, you need big shoulders and skin like a rhinoceros, but it is what it is. I've lifted my head above the parapet, so I've got to take both ends of it. And I do, and it's frustrating. I tend not to be really bothered about what they say about me, but when they say anything about my family, that seems to hurt a little bit more, or my friend, and that annoys me. But you have to be hard-faced. You have to be. willing to take that or don't get on board.
Sure.
And sometimes the hardest ones are, people within the farming community, and you get quite a few of them. And I really get frustrated with them. I really feel, we're a small minority, and if we can't pull together and work together, well, we're absolutely cream crackered. And that does frustrate me. I'm not going to beat about the bush. We'll never agree on everything, and we'll never be friends. But when you do it publicly to somebody, when you go and try and bring somebody down publicly, that is hopefully trying to do the right thing for the industry. And I'm not always right. Like I said, I get a lot of things wrong, and I post things that maybe I shouldn't. But the truth is, my heart's in the right place. I'm a nice enough guy. I can watch after myself. I'm not afraid of going out there and being vocal. But the truth is, if we're not in this together, we are going to sink, and we will sink a lot quicker. The more we can bring in, and you can see what's happened in the Netherlands, you can see how they joined together to produce their own political party and be so successful. When you have the people and they come together, you've got power. And we need to do that within our farming and countryside community, from the uplands of Scotland to the lowlands of Devon. We're a small group of people, and we need to pull together as one to go forward.
Sure.
In all lines of agriculture, because we are food producers, we are custodians, but at the end of the day, we have to make a living, and we have to pay our bills.
Sure. I get that. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I live in France for a good part of the time, and in France, definitely the farmers pull together a lot more than British farmers. Always been the family farm as for the fantastic backbone that it is of the agricultural industry. The family farm has been its own worst enemy when it comes to going to the market and bidding against your neighbours for the same sheep instead of getting together and buying the sheep together like they would over here. That's always happened, but it's something that is changing. I think farmers are becoming a lot more together, and obviously more recently with maybe I'll just move the subject on a little bit here, Gareth, more recently with the COVID thing, and we're starting to look more at the mental health side of it now, and people being isolated on family farms and not working together. The mental health thing has started to take its toll and raising its head as well, and bringing people back together. And I think that's got to be a good thing. There's got to be a lot more farmers looking after each other than maybe they used to.
Oh, definitely. I think there's a lot more talk about mental health, which is great. I'm helping quite a few mental health charities, and I share a lot of stuff, and I talk quite openly about it. I'm quite fortunate. I'm quite strong mentally, or I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But, I've had a Saturday night here 2 months ago talking somebody down from committing suicide, I filmed my wife having a glass of wine, and my social media went, and now and again that somebody's serious. I had been talking to him before, and we had a long conversation, and it's quite scary. It's quite scary because you're put in a position that you wouldn't want to be. But I'm not trained to do anything, but I was lucky that I was in a position that I knew where to point him in the right direction and who to contact, and then people were there. And they helped him, and that's very, very important that we're able to share that, because sharing the load, talking about it, because there's major issues within our industry, from paperwork to government policies to price cutting from supermarkets, to pressure, and we see it across the board. And sometimes it's that straw that breaks the camel's back, and it's that cow that dies in the morning. That's enough to take people off the edge, or the wife says, I'm leaving you, and financial difficulties. There's always light at the end of the tunnel, and there's always somebody at the end of the phone, and there's always somebody there to help. So never ever give in, never give up. Always ask somebody or look for that solution, because there is somebody out there for you.
I think you're right, and it is about the farmers helping each other as well, and things like RSABI in Scotland and Farmstrong. I don't know if you come across Farmstrong, a New Zealand outfit. They're now setting themselves up in Scotland and going to spread across the country, and did fantastically well in New Zealand and going global now. But it brings farmers together, to farmers like yourself, but farmers like everybody, really, just to put their bit in there, and just to you can't help everybody, but you can help somebody. And I think that's the farming community, as I said, is coming together. And I think bringing that farming community together with the mental health side of it, and again, as you say, bringing the farmers together to fight the fight, as it was for our own industry. So I think maybe the two go a little bit hand in hand there, Gareth.
Oh, 100%. Everything goes in hand. That's life, and when we can come together to work together, we can help each other, and that's so important going forward. It doesn't matter what you are or what you do or what walk of life you are. Somebody will have a bad day every now and again, and somebody will be, in need of a chat or, a hug or a kiss or a cup of tea or a pint. All these things are relevant. So never give up on anything, and always be there for somebody if they want.
Brilliant. Well, that's certainly sound advice, and that's ticking the box for all of us, I think, listening to that. And again, I hear your passion comes through in the same way that mine does on that one. And there's a few other subjects I'd like to talk to you about: carbon, environmentalists, rewilding. There's a lot of things we could go on all night here, and you'll have the same message on all of those, really, and a well-informed man too. But I mean, all those things are being looked at now, from both sides. But where do you see our industry heading now? I know it's easy to say, well, if we don't do this, we're doomed. We're not doomed. Where do you see we're going? Are we winning this fight? Are we doing enough now to bring the fight back into our own corner?
Yeah, definitely. I think we're at a crossroads. We need to be looking at food waste within this country. 1/3 of the food that we produce goes to waste. We've got thousands of people queuing up in food banks. There's some problem there, definitely. But again, I think what we need to be doing is bringing scientists onto farms to do proper carbon catchments on their farms, and understanding how we're doing a good job, not a bad job. And, I've been doing a program I did a program for S4C when I went down to Cornwall, onto this little council farm, onto the Bannerman project, where they were capturing methane on that farm and running a New Holland tractor, which was an amazing achievement. But not just that, they were running a generator that was milking the cows off the poop of them cows, And again, it's a constant circle. We've got the technology, we've got the innovation, we just need the help from government and from, the farming unions and the industry. We all need to work together to find these solutions, and they're there. We could use that methane then to heat greenhouses, to grow more tomatoes and cucumbers in this country instead of using fossil fuels. There is ways and means of us doing it, but it's going to take money, it's going to take science, it's going to take cooperation. So I'm always positive. My glass is always overflowing, and I'm always looking for solutions. And I'm working on a few projects now with some amazing people, and I mean really top scientists from across the world. And it's such a great place to be. So if you'd have asked me this question 10 years ago, I think maybe I would have been saying, I don't know where we could go. But I think we need food security in this country. We need to be looking at more seasonal food production and looking back at what our forefathers did, the way that they grew so much food without artificial fertilizers. And there's ways and means, I'm working with a lovely company down in Hereford using seaweed on the farm now. I've been using it, and you know what? It's working a treat. Everybody has to look for solutions, and we can look for these solutions naturally. I've been working with a vineyard in Conway where it's going to be the first vineyard in the world to be totally underwall, using that as a mulch to keep the sun off the soil in the summer, to keep the warmth in the soil during the winter, keep the weeds down. All these things, we can adapt, we can utilise, we can add value to the products we've got. So, yeah, let's go forward. And again, build a better Britain on our bellies. Farming food revolution. These are all key words. You might think I'm pushing these things, but they are so important for people to understand, because we have been sleepwalking into food shortages. You can see what's happened in the Ukraine. You can see how they're pulling the plug in the Netherlands. New Zealand's the same. America, a lot of the European countries, the farmer is under a lot of pressure, and we have to fight back and make sure that the consumer and customer understands that we are the primary producer. Once you get that out there and people start to really realise, you see what happens in the Netherlands, people went, bloody hell, we could be in trouble here if we don't watch after our farmers, because that's where, and it's not scaremongering, it's making sure that people have an educated choice and they understand how food's produced and where it's produced.
I totally get that, and the only one thing I'd probably come back with that, of course, is that as we make our food better and eat local, buy local, breed local, obviously different animals for different areas, that does come at a cost, doesn't it? And the price of food is definitely too cheap within the UK compared to what it was many years back, and that does come at a cost. And again, that's a hard battle to fight when you're fighting against somebody that says, well, I've got a low income, but I still want my holiday and my pints of beer and my carryouts, what have you, that they're going to have to pay more for the price of food. But I think that's just a natural fact, and we've got to again educate people that that's something they're going to have to do in the next generation.
Yeah, that's a massive challenge, and I will say cheap food comes at a cost. Cheap food comes at a cost to the environment. Cheap food comes at a cost to the animal, and it comes at a cost to the farmer, and that's the bottom line. We've been fortunate that food's been subsidised by government after the Second World War with a cap, and things are changing now where it's gone more environmentally based, and that's government policy. As business people, we have to adapt to that situation and make sure that our businesses are stable and they are paying the mortgages and paying the rent and whatever the problems you've got at home. Maybe Mrs. Thompson with 3 children in inner city Birmingham has got 10 times as many problems as you, and she's got every single meal is going to be a headache. So we have got challenges, no doubt in my mind, and we have to keep food to be affordable, but it has to be environmentally friendly, and I think it has to be regenerative. But I do agree, it's been too cheap for too long, and that's been pushed by supermarkets and it's been pushed by government. So, how do we readdress that? That's maybe a question for another podcast.
Yeah, it is indeed. And it's been a fantastic podcast. It has been, Gareth. I've been looking forward to talking to you for a while, and I bumped to you briefly at the Royal Welsh Show. And by the way, great coverage that you did of the Royal Welsh Show. That was absolutely superb there. I watched some of that. You got in amongst all the people, and absolute pleasure to talk to you, Gareth. And you're a busy man there out in the media doing there, but you're fighting the fight on all our behalves, I think, and I'm proud to be part of that.
Hey, thank you very much, and I hope everybody enjoys the podcast, and good luck to see you in the future.
Gareth, all the best to you, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to that highly interesting episode of Top Lines and Tales, your weekly livestock podcast. And as always, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Harborough, for their continued support. And as Gareth is a sheep farmer, let's talk about sheep for a second. And if your tups and gimmers are needing a final bloom before going to the sales, so why don't you consider using some of Harborough's Olympic sheep mash? Yes, that's Olympic sheep mash. So that's how good it is, and widely used and easy to feed, and it helps increase appetite just when you need it most, just before those sales. So thanks very much to Harborough, and please get in touch with your local Harborough representative to see what else they can do for you on your nutritional requirements. And look them up on your local representative, or look them up on social media. And while you're there on social media, don't forget to look out our Top Lines and Tales Facebook page, where you'll find photographs and other interesting things to back up this and previous episodes.